Okay, welcome. It is Nonprofit Problem Solver episode 27. And I have with me today Emily Hicks-Rotella, who is going to walk me through a conversation over the next 40 to 45 minutes. We're going to consider for nonprofits how and when, or rather, sorry about that, how much time and money should I spend in order to make tech worthwhile? So that was the question we settled on, which is basically, there's so many things we could have talked about, weren't there? But before we get in to that, Emily, why don't you just introduce yourself and tell folks where they can find you online if they want to follow up with some questions or comments and better understand what you do.
Okay, for sure. And we might even be able to get to how and when specifically on spending for tech. But so I'm Emily Hicks-Rotella. Thank you so much, Kev, for talking to me this morning. I'm really excited. And I bill myself as the nonprofit data and tech strategist for my firm, which is Make Tech Work For You. And same for the website, maketechworkforyou.com. So if you want to reach me, all my contact and getting on my calendar, you can do through there.
That's fantastic. Okay, so let's just start at the very beginning. So I've in full transparency, I'm an unreconstructed data geek. I've had to deal with large scale data sets over my career, and I feel pretty comfortable around technology. And obviously, you wouldn't bill yourself or be doing the job you do if you couldn't say the same. So for many nonprofits, however, particularly people who are passion and mission led and create new organizations that they're hoping to scale, the questions around tech and data are sometimes afterthoughts, or they're delayed and postponed until they're sort of have to address them. But what I wanted to start with is how do you sort of introduce this topic to people who are not comfortable with data, not used to handling data, I mean, dare I say it, there's some overlap between data and tech, just even on a conceptual definitional basis, isn't there?
Certainly, absolutely. So I like to start a lot of these conversations by giving my own background, because I did not come from a data and tech background to get to, like you said, the description of feeling comfortable using it or having experience. And I was actually just coaching a client yesterday that if they wanted to move up and do this new thing in tech that would help automate some of their processes, they would have to have someone that at least had some confidence to just try it, because it could be a little intimidating at first, but we would want them to gain those skills, especially in-house. So I didn't come from a background in tech. I did like music and theater in my early, college studies. I worked in book publishing the first 5 years of my working career. And I just got interested in finding ways to move nonprofits more effectively and efficiently towards their missions. And at the same time, got introduced to working in data and tech, really for business efficiency, like supply chain logistics kind of things. And thought it was really a potential for moving the needle in the nonprofit world towards mission achievement. So I just started going for it. I applied for jobs that I had no business applying for. I was really lucky to get a hiring manager who believed in my passion and energy when I said I could learn it, I could take it on. And then I spent tons of time Googling and getting people to talk to me and mentor me and teach me, and lots of hours redoing work that went bad the first time. And through all of that, really found that there were some mindsets that I needed to approach learning this stuff, this data and tech stuff, especially, just specifically in the nonprofit realm. And when I started taking on those mindsets, which are common things that people use in the nonprofit world anyway, critical thinking, problem solving, innovation, grit, resilience, the technical stuff started to come easier to me. So I started sort of testing that out with my colleagues who, as you were mentioning, don't come from a tech, perspective necessarily. They're really good at what they do, community building, fundraising, grant writing, whatever it is, but don't put their talents towards data and tech. I started helping them use those mindsets towards the work they had to do in their data and technology in their organizations. That seemed to work well for them, and I just kept rolling with it. And I really do believe in the like tagline that you would see if you visited my website, that this is 90% mindset, 10% tech. And if I could do it, anyone can. So that's how I typically like to start those conversations with people who might otherwise be apprehensive or reasonably feel hesitant about this topic.
Well, that's a great story, and I'm sure that humanizes a lot of what may seem sort of cold and remote. And I think that there's other dynamics. We're all aware of or have an impression of a fast moving tech world, with and Silicon Valley sort of casts its shadow on the financial space and so on. And then we're sort of in awe of it in some ways, where we're in our communities doing our sort of nonprofit programming. And it just seems in some respects miles away. But what you said something in your story there, which I want to come back to, and it's understanding how you move the needle,
Mhm.
because that was really my entry point. I only got interested in the data because I was really on the hook for service performance. So I had to know how well the services were doing, and since you had to know what the needle was in order to move it.
I think that's why or I felt really connected to you when we met on Clubhouse, because at the core, even if the things we're coaching people on are like what our day-to-day activities and job things look like, we were approaching the topic from the same, core value, I think, of moving the needle and doing what's best for the mission, as opposed to like what's best for your strategic plan or just best for your data tech systems. Like those things are in service of working towards your mission.
Yeah, and I've noticed a difference in larger organizations, particularly public sector organizations, and I've worked in health, education, social care, and then the sort of very small or startup nonprofits, and even some that are sort of approaching that sort of $1 million mark. Is that on the one hand, the large scale organizations have tons and tons of data. They have IT teams. They've got all sorts of things going on, not necessarily making best value in this inordinate expense of time and people around their data and their technology. And so there's a glut of information or a glut of data, but not a lot of information and value coming out of it. And on the other hand, in the small shops, there's almost no data and no technology. and
Yeah.
sort of anecdotal qualitative evidence. And there's got to be some sort of happy medium where people can get really good value out of the time and energy put into doing metrics or data or understanding the needle, as it were, and doing that well.
Absolutely. And I think you're right. It's that kind of perfect coming together balance of keeping the mission in mind and all those actions that are important to the people on the programming team, to the board members, executive team, and coming with the importance of the technology as well to move that towards mission. So together is ideal. But interestingly, I did have my first experience in nonprofit was at a very large national in the States nonprofit, which also had regional offices that operated somewhat independently, somewhat the same as national, but somewhat
When I
independently.
hear that, I know that's a data nightmare.
Well, it was we weren't handling, I think, the people data relationship well enough, because what ended up I sat on the national team and we had a very large tech budget and tech team. And I actually spent a good amount of my time really happily traveling to regional offices, helping to set up their people with the right skills and mindsets and confidence to use data, both that they were collecting locally and to use the tools and the data that the national organization was providing for them and asking them to interact with.
So it seems like we've we've come backwards right to the nub of the issue, and I love the way you framed it as a as a people tech issue. The relationship, again, we've talked about humanizing it, the way that people interact with the technology, and there's a sort of fair bit of time and attention with that, the whole sort of UI UX debate about what the experience is and that human interaction with the technology. But the point of it is the data and what it's telling us about what it is we're doing and how we use it. It seems to me.
I think that's a fair point that we don't want to focus on what the technology is itself. Like we can think of it because what really matters is the insights we can gain and the decisions we can make based on the insights, and the insights come from the information, as you made that connection from data to info to insights. So I agree that it comes down to the data. And I also have seen, though, that there are some barriers for people. I only work with nonprofits, so I'm just talking in this sector, but I think this is fair across the private sector as well, that for people who don't consider themselves techies or feel intimidated by data or technology, they have barriers to using the important data that you called out to make their insights and be data driven. So I really I like to focus on that specific niche of like helping people feel more confident and feel like they are in control, not that the computer or the data is in control of them and they don't quite know what's going on, that they have a really clear understanding and they're, doing the decision making, not some outside force.
So is with the mindset issue, do you find that primarily around the data or primarily around the technology or some blend of the two that sort of varies person to person?
There probably is a range that we might be able to plop some like small to medium to large nonprofits tend to fall somewhere on that spectrum. But I think there is a real tide of appreciation for data, and also there is just some forcing factors like donor and grants asking for
Yes.
data that many people that I interact with now understand that it's an important topic and want to be a part of using data, are intimidated in some ways just by data, but also layered on top, getting to their data and using technology to do that does come up as a pain point and a barrier.
Okay. So when we're looking at how much time and money you need to spend to make tech worthwhile, and we've already established that it's a data issue as much as anything else. It sort of matters where you are with your data in the first place, because tech can't necessarily fix a data problem, although it can fix some data problems. And I know people who sell tech think it can fix a lot more data problems than it can. Do you sense there's a bit of a chicken and egg question with tech versus data?
There probably is, although maybe if we looked at it, the approaches you might be able to see what factors you would want to choose chicken or egg for each of those within each nonprofit. There might be a culture of data-driven decision making already, but data is being consumed like very manually, like tracked manually, maybe with paper forms and being entered later manually into spreadsheets. And that if people might be using data in that way for decision making or for gaining insights, but they could be doing it a lot more efficiently and effectively with potential different technology systems
And
like a
that's a best
CR.
case scenario, I would guess, where people appreciate the use of data, but they're spending perhaps they're inefficient because it's manual, and so the appropriate tech platform, bearing in mind the implementation and the changeover and the reworking of certain workflows, they then can make really good use of the technology because they gain certain efficiencies, but they already understand how to use data.
Yeah. Well, I'm
Whereas,
interested
okay,
for the clients that you work with, have you seen either for individuals or for whole organizations leaning one or the other, that they are like kind of data phobic but not tech phobic, or vice versa?
yeah, I think people are now, because we're so used to doing so many tasks on our phones,
Mm.
that I think people are a lot less tech phobic than they were. But I don't know that people are as really familiar with the types of data that actually matter. So you're right that there's those factors around grant makers want to see it. We've got to put things in the annual report. Maybe a board member asks for something. But if you're not using data every day to improve your programming, or to inform the way that your social media is working, or to inform the way that your fundraising campaigns are going, then you're not really using data. No technology is going to fix that, because you won't run the reports, you won't look at the dashboards, you won't, and even if you do, you won't know how to then say, now what do we do? It's those sort of data skills as opposed to the tech skills.
Right. And I think, at the beginning, you said even just the terms, there's some overlap, some kind of Venn diagram that we might see. And I think there's an ideal Venn diagram that we're talking about, where you would have as much understanding and appreciation of data as you would of tech, and that those two appreciations could come together to be really powerful. But it might be a really good exercise for each organization to look at where they fall on that Venn diagram. Like, is their circle bigger on the data appreciation side than on the tech side, or vice versa?
Well, this is an interesting question. I think people who are unfamiliar with either would find it almost impossible to assess themselves. They would just say, I know I don't know anything, but after that, I don't know what I don't know.
Yeah, that phrase needs to be put on a plaque somewhere. I don't know what I don't know, because it's a really common one in this work, which in some ways I like to use to our advantage when working with clients, because then I say, great, so you're not limited by a certain tech that you already know and maybe are frustrated with, to say, I know it can't do this or it can't do that, so we don't see the path forward for doing the things we want to do. But if you don't know what you don't know, that could be something that you use. Just take a blank piece of paper and start imagining, your most ideal situation of your work, what your tools would be looking like that you'd be using, what your data would look like. And let's just get that out there to know and start the discussion there.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that makes a lot of sense, because you can address directly the mindset issues that you're talking about. And I think working in a group, you'll find that there are different sets of issues. I guess what the sort of tease in the question of how much time and money I should spend to make it worthwhile is, it sort of depends on what your comfort level is with the data, and what your data management already is. And if it's on paper, then you can make tech quite worthwhile. The mistake, I think, a very tempting, seductive mistake, is to feel that, well, we don't have any data, let's buy a system
Mm.
and the system will sort the problem out for us. And I think, how do you let people down gently when they say that to you?
Just I think I have heard that question, and also more subtly the general thought that, like, technology has some magic. So even if you do have a data focus, but there's some problems, that some tech system will just solve all of them and do magic, and increase your, like, giving campaigns by 10 times.
The magic, I will admit, some sensation of witnessing magic the first time I saw wireless charging. I mean, I was like, well, that's actually pretty cool, because in my whole life, everything, you had to plug it in. I mean, I remember when you
Yeah,
plugged
no,
in remotes, to the TV.
this tech is magic. It is magic. This might be a bit tangent to what your original question was, but I think this tech is very magical. It does things that we can hardly, understand sometimes, but we can still use it. And in fact, working with data and technology in nonprofits, I find that there are some systems that build themselves as having a UI or a UX that's so easy and so user friendly that anyone can use it and have these amazing, make insights out of their data. But in reality, I see many people using those systems and still having trouble connecting to it, having a relationship with it, feeling in control of their work processes, their data, their tech. And I think some of that's because they don't have the behind the scenes view from that beautiful UI, that easy to use UI, to have at least a foundation of understanding about how data is stored, collected, tracked and manipulated. And I really enjoy when I work with clients to be able to have some like spreadsheet work going on at the
Hmm.
same time as, say, maybe a CRM or a beautiful donor, database, because having some spreadsheet skills does help you understand what's going on behind that beautiful UI. And I find that that is very useful for people feeling confident and able to use their systems better.
Yeah, I think one of the initial barriers to getting over some of the mindset issues with data is recognizing that the numbers are in a bit just like words in building sentences and paragraphs and pages and reports, and that there's relationships here that you need to understand. And I think that's a great example with a spreadsheet, just because it's a very 2D way of laying things out that you can then complicate with formulas and so on and so forth. And it's worth recognizing that there are a number of different context in nonprofits where we would have issues with data and tech, and they don't all move at the same speed. So you might have, for example, a lot of nonprofits are really comfortable using QuickBooks or Zero or something to do their accounts, and they have less of an issue perhaps with the data and tech from a finance perspective. And then the programming is maybe a lot of paper and manual tabs and stuff. And then you have things like events and auctions and online stuff where it is your really up to date UIs. Everything's really flash, and so it's not a sort of uniform across all the activities that we're engaged in.
I think you're right, although more and more, in some ways good, I see how organizations are understanding the importance of connecting their data and communicating across different teams, different, holders of information and knowledge. And so when there are the more you connect these things and maybe, create a single picture of your constituents or your donor, the more the impacts are across the board when a single system or a single like data collector is having issues or needs some improvement, there's room for growth.
Yeah. I'm just wondering, as I'm listening to us speak, if we're avoiding the temptation to really geek out on this stuff, because I know I can get really into the weeds, and I'm hoping we're not using lots of acronyms. I know we keep saying UX and UI for the uninitiated, which is not what UI stands for. It stands for user interface, and UX is user experience. I'm going to throw one other geeky thing through, which is the SaaS systems, this the software as a service, SaaS, and just to wonder if, in your experience in managing the mindset, because I really want to spend the rest of our time on how you deal with the mindset issues, but a lot of software now is provided remotely online. You log in through a browser. Maybe there's a mobile phone or a tablet app, but it's not something that you store locally. Does
Right.
does that matter? Is that just sort of an industry shift that we've witnessed over the last couple of years? Has that had any bearing on comfort zones or comfort levels or mindsets with regard to the types of tech that people might invest in? Because largely it's now everything's really moving into that SaaS online format.
Correct. And there are, there are more antonyms to or not antonyms, the ending part of that word. There's SaaS, there's also PaaS, platform as a service. There's, I don't even know how to pronounce it, infrastructure as a service, IaaS. So that's really expanding, as is our just general societal use of the internet and the services that are cloud based in our personal lives. So I do think that is it's an avenue for people to feel more connected to their SaaS systems, right? So you're logging into your CRM, your constituent relationship management system, or your LMS, your learning management system, just like you would log into your bank or to your, college alumni portal, right? There's a username, there's a password, there's something familiar about all of this. And I don't actually work with the hardware folks on any IT teams, or
Mhm.
if I'm working with a nonprofit, sometimes they are also have other consultants that are specific to their hardware needs. So the conversation doesn't come up that much, but I also don't think it's on a lot of people's radar that what's the best kind of choice to keep things on a server, close by, or to do it in the cloud. How about not just for access, but for backups? Like, there we could definitely geek out on what IT
You
team
got no
decisions.
backups, yeah. Ooh.
Yeah.
We'll
I
do
think
that.
it's
We'll do
to
that offline, shall we, Emily? Yeah.
save everybody the pain of listening to that fun conversation.
But the question was, I guess, is it increasing the comfort zones and making your job a bit easier with regard
Yeah.
to mindset?
Yes, in a way, although like I said, I think some of the systems that are also built as so user friendly with the best user interfaces that it creates this thought of magic and ease of use and instant, results without much work across all internet-based, cloud services. So maybe your bank is really good. They have a great website. You can download all your information. It's always correct. You never have to go back and be like, is this real life? Was this really a charge on my credit card? Like, unless there was fraud or something you forgot, the charges are the charges and the data reflects real life. In nonprofit work, particularly because information is coming from so many ways, because there's so many asterisks, so many off cases, that don't fit the general mold, that there's just, it's always going to be a work stream, or it seems there's always a work stream to make the data reflect the real world. And I think
Mhm.
that does impact levels of trust and user friendliness, the relationship between people and their systems.
Yeah. And I think again, we're back to this sort of, human data tech interface. And a lot of the time, I think we're looking at the problems from one side or another. In other words, there's the collection of data that we need to arrange and put into a system, and there's the extracting of a system, extracting data out of the system to make sense of it so we can make decisions, which is a different function. And I remember, back in the day when people would collect loads and loads of information and find, like, actually we had no way of getting it out. We didn't, I know we fed this beast for years, but we actually can't get any of that information out. We can't write the code. We don't know the scripts and all the stuff. And people don't have to worry really about that sort of stuff in the same way, do they?
It, mm, it's a really interesting question. In many cases, the answer could simply be no, right? Like, QuickBooks comes with the top 5 or top 10 reports built in that you would need, and you hardly need there's no information they're not including in those reports. You hardly need to do any manipulation of either the data or the tech. But in other cases, no. I mean, just this week, I was working with a client that's working with a learning management system that has reports that you can pull within the system, but there are a couple things that it doesn't pull out, and you would need to use their APIs to access. And, like, geeking out on this, like, their APIs only return 10 results per call. So you need a code to paginate or loop through the results to get everything, right? So there
And
are
for
some cases.
the uninitiated, API is the connectivity between different apps. So the reason you can connect your email to your calendar is through an API. They talk to each other, and sometimes they're off the shelf, and sometimes you have to work around them in a way.
Yeah. It's a piece of code that looks unintelligible in many ways, but is basically an English saying, like, "Hello, other system that you use, like a Salesforce or a Canvas. I'd like to get this data from you. Here's, like, what you need to give it to me, and then it will return it back."
It's the
Uh,
digital handshake. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Or exchange of, like, an envelope on a park bench.
Right. It's between pages 4 and 5.
Uh,
Right.
There's a lot of, yeah, you can do a lot with these connections. You don't just have to pull information out. You can actually push information in. There's a lot of different things you can do with that.
But
But
it's
so
interesting
that's
you
the
mentioned
that,
QuickBooks, and then again, I can think of a lot of the stuff around fundraising or events. The level of sophistication that we can get technologically seems to rely to some extent on how standardized the data is. In the finance world, it's pretty standardized. In the fundraising or events, it's pretty standardized. I'm a guest. I want to buy a ticket. I want to donate this amount. This, maybe a frequency or not. There isn't a huge range. We could geek out on field types, but that's not really the issue. But
right.
when it comes to programming, what actually happens in the field with, say, the people that you're working, or if you're running something in the arts and culture or the environmental space, what data are you collecting to show for impact could be brand new. There may be no standardization whatsoever, and you have to
Right.
create, you're in Excel or Google Sheets, manually collecting numbers because there isn't a system that understands what you're trying to do.
Right. And certainly the core question of like, what outcomes do we want? What would we need to know that we're on the way to getting those outcomes? What do we need to know to reflect on our work and see if we need to pivot? Those are questions that you can think of outside of any technology,
And
that's one
those are data questions.
data.
That's the familiarity with the data that you need in order to make the best sense of tech, it seems.
I think that that's definitely a big factor. But with your development example, as straightforward as I would like it to be for nonprofits, although some of the data is standardized, you still need a lot of uh, effort in some cases to manage your development landscape. So when you start throwing in not just single gifts or single event sales, but multi-year gifts, multi-month gifts, recurring gifts, when you start throwing in foundations versus individuals, when you start looking at gifts made on behalf of others or needing, well, on a Clubhouse, I think we talked a lot about Facebook donations and the pain that causes to the accounting side of nonprofits because they can hardly put it into QuickBooks even. There's not enough information from Facebook to do that.
Right,
So
right.
there's still like within what should be maybe, and this could be a topic, actually a whole topic on the complexity of donor data and how we can simplify it, or make it easier. But that is a good
Yeah,
example of like where
yeah, I have to reach for pain relief immediately. I hear that sort of that's because that seems intractable at present. But your point is that because we can develop sophisticated systems, we still need to do those digital handshakes, those exchanges of information, and that's a barrier, that's a gap, and that sometimes that's can be is handled easily, and sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's not even recognized until, oh, we can't do that. Now we have to fix it.
right. Yeah, I think to your point that it brings up issues of mindset and organizing around your mission and your objectives and your outcomes that you want. And it also requires a certain openness to learning about tech that can help and thinking about where technology might come in as a support, whereas in some cases, I think people approach it already with a feeling of this is going to be a lot of work and I'm going to have to learn a lot of stuff. It's change management, which is totally true and valid of having those feelings when you think about how technology could be a support for your mission.
Yeah, but it's again, I think we're agreeing that the, either you are already somewhere down the road of managing and understanding how to use data, and the technologies are going to help you do that better. So your time and effort is spent in leveraging the technology to perform more efficiently the things that you are already doing, or you're not handling data terribly well, and that could apply in your donor management or even your finance system. If you maybe could your books could be all a mess. The technology is not going to fix that outside of you putting that effort in, and sometimes at an inordinate amount of of learning and change around data management in a short space of time in order to make the tech actually work as it should. So
Yeah, I think we keep, in a great way, keep going back and forth between these poles, and I think that's an outcome of the fact that there may be organizations that are kind of on one side or the other, but there's probably organizations that are somewhere on the spectrum and continuing to change. Like someone new might come in that has a really data-driven mindset, and that changes the culture at the organization for how you think about data and interact with it. Or maybe the same person fills a role that doesn't have that great data outlook, but is just really geeky in tech, just really likes it for their personal life and is going to apply it in work. So different people and different contexts will change, I think, where you are on that spectrum, and what you have to do to feel like you are having growth in both areas, or one where you need it the most.
yeah, and clearly your objective in addressing the mindset issues is how they work together.
Absolutely. Yeah, it comes up often that, like, there's really no reason to have wonderful, beautiful, expensive, really cool stuff that I love, tech, if you're not using it for data-driven decision making. And as you, I think, pointed out earlier, there's really no reason in collecting data if you're not going to use it for data-driven decision making. So the tools, the data and the tech on their own without the people are pretty worthless. It's the people that really makes them come together.
Okay, so you've mentioned the term worthless, and the title of this episode is the question worthwhile. So we are trying to get this notion of worthiness and
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
and worth. And I think this is it. That you've got the human element, the data element, and the tech element. And really, what we're saying is there is a Venn diagram or a golden spot of somewhere the three working well together.
I
Where
think
Go
I,
ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Kevin. I think there is a symbiotic relationship, because I do truly believe that y- you can't not afford to start investing in, let's just stay with data, in your mindsets about data, in committing to being data driven. I don't think you can afford to not invest in that, in whatever form that means, if financially, time wise, for your staff, because on just a financial standpoint, your donors and your grant makers are asking for that data, so you need to have some commitment and investment to it. On the programmatic side, let's say, I am obviously strongly in favor of reflection of our work, so that we can make sure we're actually moving towards our outcomes and we're providing the most value as we do it, and really trying to actually solve our missions, not just pay lip service to doing some nice work, which is great, but we really want to achieve, like, the end of poverty maybe, or the end of hunger.
Mhm.
And to do that, we need to be really serious about reflecting on our work and making sure it is the most efficient and effective. And you will best do that if data is a tool in your tool belt, for that reflection and for that knowledge and wisdom. So I really don't think nonprofits who are dealing with people's very lives and happiness can afford not to invest in being data driven.
Yeah, and do you find so interesting term, this data driven, because I've got a love hate relationship with the term, and it always, it's an innocuous term, and obviously to most people just means we'll use data sensibly to make your decisions. But I have seen, and we were talking about mindset here, so I have seen situations where people adopt what we believe to be a data driven uh, approach, but it disempowers them as decision makers. In other words, they sit back and say, "Well, the data makes the decision." And I always push back on that because I thought it was really odd. I think, well, we have to interpret that. You still have a responsibility as a decision maker to own and be responsible for the decision. But there was almost this idea that, oh, to be really data driven, the numbers talk and we listen. And have you come across that? Because it made me sort of stop using the term data driven, because I thought it was giving people the wrong impression. I don't want data to drive. I want data to help me drive.
I'm a strong believer that words have a really big part to play in this. And so, like, changing words, like changing contact relation management or customer relation management to constituent relation management makes a big difference. So I think your point to how certain people might interpret and behave based on the idea of being data driven is really important. That said, I don't know. I'm going to keep my eye out for it now for sure. I think many of the clients that I work with are, maybe they're just in the weeds enough of building their data and tech cultures and systems and processes that they're really reflecting on it a lot, and saying like, is this telling us what we really need to know? And can we trust even, what it's telling us? That it's not, they haven't given up the driver's wheel as much. But I agree that if that is an outcome of like the idea of being data driven, that's not good. Again, like I said earlier, I don't want anyone to feel like their tech or their data is controlling them. I want them to feel confident that they're the
Exactly.
driver.
And particularly, you mentioned addressing poverty and other profound social issues where we're really talking about human lives at stake. And to reduce all our decision making to a set of numbers that may or may not be well collected in the first place and well measured, that's trying to address those sorts of issues. So it sort of misses the point, it seems to me. We'd be doing the people we serve a disservice to think in that way.
I think you're absolutely right. Yeah. And that's something that consistent reflection can help with, that if you continue to ask, are these numbers serving our needs to know that we're moving towards our missions, and questioning how your data looks, how your data is collected, and on the same side, how your tech works, is an important part of a successful data and tech culture at a mission driven organization.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And you find that people accept that that's the destination that they're trying to get to. The people that you're working with sort of say, yes, that's where we need to be. And we're not quite there yet, but we need to address some mindset issues and behavioral issues.
Yes, many of the people that I interact with do, or they're at least willing to entertain it, since, as you can imagine, anyone who asks, can we do this in a spreadsheet, all these questions about mission and needs start coming out. So they at least tolerate it and working with me. But I do find that many are encouragingly excited about the prospect of having data be a tool in their tool belt toward working towards their missions.
Yeah, and do you find that uh, as a result of removing some of the intimidation and making it real, that it's actually not very difficult to show examples of how a simple data relationship can help improve a process or help improve outcomes for programming or any part of the organization? You find that quickly changes minds?
Ooh, the timepiece is dependent on context, but yes, more quickly, I think. What doing that ends up having an outcome of is having people in nonprofit organizations improve their relationships with their data and tech. And I like can't anthropomorphize this enough. Like I do think, because if you think about it, there's a lot of times, myself included, but a lot of people working in nonprofit orgs might say like, this computer isn't working for me, like I hate this computer. It's just not working. I'm frustrated by my CRM. I'm frustrated by the reports that we get. There's so many emotions, or like, I'm intimidated, I'm sad about this work I have to do in this tech system. Those emotions come out, and I want to not just get rid of them, I want to flip them. I want you to come into work and be like, I love opening up my CRM, not because it does everything, not because it's the perfect system, because I at least understand it well enough and I feel in control of it enough to use it for what I need to do to make it work for me and continually improve. So either in getting new systems and improving existing systems, in improving your own professional development, or including data and tech in your professional development, whatever it takes to turn that like frustration into love, that I think moves the needle for organizations in their data and tech culture to make it a part of moving the needle towards their missions.
Yeah, and I think it's just, as we draw this to a close, it seems the frustration is when that tech system is separate to the non-tech works and actions and behaviors that they do that they love to do. And so by you showing them how the tech stuff helps them understand the stuff that they really love to do and do it better, so they get a better result, you bring them closer together.
Absolutely. I think, if someone working in program had a chance for professional development that was directly in their line of work, then they really already connect to and understand why it's worthwhile to invest in building their skills in that area. And I also strongly believe that building their skills in the data and tech area will help them in their work, like you said. And I hope to keep that message going for people and get them to buy into it.
That's great. That's a lovely message and really important work. So just as we close, can you remind us, Emily, where people can get in touch with you or who can find you online?
Yes, sure. Thank you. So my website is maketechworkforyou.com, all spelled out. And my email is emily@maketechworkforyou.com. So you can reach me through any of those places. And I've got the social links on there as well. So there's a lot of communication methods. That's something I love about technology, that we have a lot of ways to get in touch.
And I'm sure people will. Thank you so much for spending the last 45 minutes or so with me. It's been a great conversation. This has been episode 27 of the Nonprofit Problem Solver podcast. Next time, on episode 28, I'll be speaking with Catherine Yule about major gifts. If not now, when? See you next time.